Let's not call her the Doomsday Cult Mom anymore. Changing the name right now. Doomsday Cult Murderer. Repeat after me. Doomsday Cult Murderer. She has lost. She has lost that title.
Well, hey, everybody, if you're like me, you love to dig into these true crime cases and learn more about the victim selection process, crime motivation, and criminal behavior in general. Well, after weeks of listening and exploring the Vallow Daybell murder case, I wonder, what price are we each paying when we do something like this? What is the price we pay to play? Let's talk about it. Well, welcome to Profiling Evil in this episode, which I'm focusing on some of the pressure and some of the negative influence that comes when we delve in to the true crime community. Now, I really appreciate all of you supporting us here at Profiling Evil. You know, the decision has been reached in the Vallow murder case, and now Vallow is going to spend the rest of her life, but more importantly, her first Mother's Day as a convict. Something she'll experience like Groundhog Day and until her death. Now, when I say a convict, I mean a convicted felon of murder, not somebody who's being held in jail until their trial happened. You know, I filmed this video in a couple of different locations around the world, so I've added a little bit of background imagery to kind of share some of the places that I've been in the last couple of weeks and spice things up a little bit. Now, Daybell was found guilty of all of the charges that were filed against her, and now she's labeled as a child murderer and a predator, but more importantly, a murderer of her own children. Whether it was religiously motivated or the result of serious mental health issues, she's guilty, and she's going to spend the rest of her life behind bars. I joined Court TV just a few hours after the verdict's announcement yesterday to talk about the victims, JJ, Tylee, and Tammy. Now, we didn't delve into Charles, but we talked specifically about those three. And it wasn't necessarily meaning that it was a deep dive. We talked kind of generically about the case for about an hour. Instead, I wanted to share what impacted me most about each one of them and this process we call criminal investigative analysis. And I'm doing this video with the survivors in mind. Now, we've had this graphic image, this visual image of Kay and Larry Woodcock throughout the course of this investigation and trial, whether it's through news programs, sitting in the courtroom images taken and then later shown, or press conferences that they've been in. We know how Annie feels about the loss of her brother and how extended family feel through the betrayal of trust that they experienced. We've seen it on all sides, but we haven't talked much about people like Vallow Daybell's son, Colby. Can you imagine the feelings of betrayal and confusion that this kid is feeling? And what about Chad Daybell's children? I mean, they went on national television to proclaim their father's innocence. They've had a tough time, I'm sure, in the last 5.5 weeks, 6 weeks now, as we learn more and more about Chad's involvement in this entire thing. And we learned that Lori wasn't simply hoodwinked, nor was Chad, that together, Gas and Flame came together and they played an integral role together in this ritually motivated crime. Now, I'm going to toss in a couple of comments that I made from England last week as Vinnie Politan asked me about the predictions that these cult leaders were making in regard to how long in particular J.J. Vallow would live. Let's listen to that exchange for just a moment. And by the way, I want you to know the bandwidth in the Cotswolds was not very good. So there were some little glitches here and there when it deals with the audio, and the video kind of gets raggedy looking at times. Let's watch.
Lori ever talked to you, or Lori and Chad ever talked to you about how long they expected JJ to live?
Lori had said that he was going to have a very short life, and then in a meeting that we had at Lori's house in early August
Of 2019.
He said that JJ was going to have a very short life, that he was going to, the reason why he was going to live a short life was because he was going to come right back as Colby's child.
And to your knowledge, did Alex believe this?
Yes, but Alex believed everything they told him.
All right, I think Mike King is back with us. Mike, again, making predictions of premature deaths of people who are now considered murder victims by the prosecution. Are they doing this to get more power?
You know, Vinny, this is something that I've seen over and again with cults, whether it's sexuality or now homicide, and that is they create these revelations that are going to support what they're planning. And, you know, everything is created in the mind first before it's acted out physically. But knowing that this thing is against the law, that these are inappropriate kinds of thoughts, what better way than to say, holy cow, I would never commit crime, but God is commanding.
Mike King staying up late in the UK, unbelievable. Let's take a listen to another one of the members who testified, but who has tried to distance herself a little bit more, Zulema Pastanez.
One of the things that they started saying to me from the beginning was that putting me in a position of being so special. And, you know, like Glory and Chad used to say to me often, you know, your mission is the most important one. We have to take care of you more than we have to take care of anyone else, because your mission is most important and more important than anybody else's. They always said that to me from the beginning.
Mike King, I want to focus in on one word here. They. She's not just talking about Chad Daybell, she's talking about they. So I understand what's happening at trial. Lori's attorney's trying to make her a victim of Chad's, but what are your thoughts about the way Zulema describes what happened to her?
Well, I think she fits perfectly the mold, and it's great to see Dr. Hassan, great to be out with Caitlin and you. The thing that's so important to me is the fact that here we've got her going in and saying, he offered me some position of greatness, because these are like-minded people. He's finding people who really want to believe and be something more than anyone else. And that's what it's all about in these cults, is having more light knowledge, more information than anybody else, special dispensation to do great things. And these cult leaders are so dang good at figuring out where our weak spots are and offering us something that fills a gap that says, holy cow, I am really important in this operation. Well, last night we got together again to discuss the case in detail, joined by my friend, Dr. Judy Ho, a forensic psychologist who is absolutely amazing. Now, we chatted about the evidence of Lori's hair being found in the duct tape that bound little JJ. Vinny asked me about that and wanted my response, but my response actually went, I think, in a little different direction than I intended, as I shared two pieces of interesting evidence regarding how JJ suffered and the way in which it impacted me as I listened to that testimony. The first was clearly that the evidence over his head, that there was evidence of that bag being placed over him and his body being wrapped in that bag, where Alex Cox's fingerprints were recovered. But then there was duct tape that bound this little child and made it impossible for him to pull the bag off of his head or remove it from his body. And that duct tape had Lori Vallow's hair in the duct tape. The only indication that came out of court was that she was there when this little boy was suffocated. Let's watch.
Let me bring in my guest tonight. Retired police commander Mike King, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, also the author of an amazing book, involving the Zion Society. He investigated them. Deceived is the name of the book. Great to see you, Mike. By the way, the book Deceived, the foreword to that book written by our other guest tonight, Dr. Judy Ho, clinical and forensic neuropsychologist in Los Angeles, California. Great to have you both here. Thank you so much. This is such a big night, a monumental step in this case, and to get some sense of justice here. Let me start, Mike, with you. This hair on the duct tape and where it's placed, it tells me she was there at the time. And for me, this plays a huge role in everything, because no longer are we just theoretically talking about zombies and, oh, I don't know what's going on. Oh, the prophet is manipulating me. No, no, no. She's there at the murder, Mike.
It fills in completely a whole bunch of holes, doesn't it, Vinny? This idea that they had that you only have a couple of minutes from the time you extract a zombie to keep that person from getting it. And it horrifies me to think of them holding this little child down and taping those plastic bags on him. There were two things that really got me. One you mentioned, and that was her hair in the duct tape, under the duct tape, between the plastic bag. And the second thing was this little child scratching and trying to get that stuff off of him. Tells me that this wasn't a child that was medicated and unconscious. This was a child fighting for his life from the very people that are charged with protecting him. If anything, the one place we should be safe, Vinny, is safe at home.
Well, while I'm hopefully usually a little more controlled in my emotional connection to these cases, I let my feelings show on how I felt about this child suffering. After we talked about JJ, our discussion elevated and went to Tylee Ryan and how her remains were discovered. Now remember, she was found in Chad Daybell's pet cemetery, dismembered, burned, and left inside of a green bucket. And that's kind of significant to me. Now, while those of us who participated in the Court TV segment last night seemed relieved that a verdict was in, I saw something kind of peculiar happening behaviorally amongst this panel of experts as we tried to talk about this case. We started to see emotions bubbling to the surface, and frankly, I was no exception. Vinny asked me about Daybell's friend who commented about when she spoke to Chad about the missing Tylee Ryan. She found Chad's comments about Tylee and where he said to her, Tylee didn't like me. That past tense reference really bothered her, and it caused her enough concern that she actually talked about it in the trial when she testified. Now, this caused concern, and frankly, Chad, when she went back and asked about it, said, no, I never said that, but she recalled it vividly. And the thing that was so important was this past tense, he didn't like me. Because at that point in time, Tylee and JJ were both missing. And we see this information kind of taking a really important play in this case as it came together. Let's watch.
Unreal where Tylee Ryan ended up in that pet cemetery, burned and dismembered. It was evil. Pure evil. Now, Chad Daybell's neighbor testified, and there was a moment here. It was a little subtle, but I think pretty revealing. Take a listen.
I said to him, you told me when we met that she had just lost a daughter. And he said, no, I didn't. I said, yes, you did. And so I knew that it was Tylee that he was talking to me about. I asked him also, where are they? I asked him, where are the kids, Chad? And doesn't Tylee want a life, a job, a car, a boyfriend? And he said she didn't like people and she didn't like me.
And what struck you about those statements?
Because he said didn't.
He used the past tense?
He used the past tense.
The past tense. Using the past tense. This is before Tylee's remains are found in his backyard. Let's bring back in our guests, Mike King, Dr. Judy Ho. Mike, is that something that investigators look for when you're interviewing someone? Because this isn't a police interview. This is him in a casual conversation. Maybe he has his guard down a little bit. Seems very revealing to me.
Absolutely, Vinny, and you do listen for things like this, but you can't take it at face value, so you listen to how they speak generically, too. Some people just don't get tense right when they're speaking, so you can't take that one word, but you figure out real quickly whether they mean past tense or present tense as you hold these interviews. And, you know, this case, we've been following this thing from day one when those children came up missing. There's been a couple of things that have haunted me over the last couple of years that I'm going to just spout out right now, Vinny, in regard to Tylee. And one is when Charles Vallow was murdered. Nobody's ever really talked about this. I've never seen the green bucket that Tylee's remains were found in. But in one of those rooms when police were searching through, you catch a corner glimpse of a green bucket. And I've always put those two together, and I wondered if that's the same bucket that hauled clothing or whatever else from place to place. The other thing was a video that we've never been able to really show that has the kids walking through Yellowstone Park. And we shared it with police. It never showed up in the trial, so I don't know the status of it. But the thing that captured me then, Vinny, was Mom and Uncle Alex weren't taking care of JJ as he ran back and forth next to 200-degree hot pots. It was Tylee that was doing that, and I think she was a protector and a lovely child that didn't deserve this.
I think you're right on there, Mike. I think you are absolutely right. She loved that little guy, and she was taking care.
Hey, folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I wanted to take a minute and tell you about our affiliate, Truth Finder. It's a company that I've been using for a couple of years to research cases and individuals. Now, Truth Finder uses publicly available information, but it brings it together in a way that provides answers quickly and concisely. You can use Truth Finder to check out that new love in your life, or just to find somebody you haven't seen for an awfully long time. Truth Finder provides these comprehensive background reports, telephone reports, email reports, and even location information. So when you go in and examine the information in their search results, you're going to find personal information, contact information, and places where your target has lived, not only historically, but currently. Now, all this can seem really overwhelming and maybe a little invasive to you. So I want to make sure you understand all of the information is publicly available information. Truth Finder just has an algorithm that brings it all together in a way that makes it a whole lot easier to access. Now, Truth Finder is an affiliate, which means we get a tiny commission when you sign up. It's about enough to buy a Diet Dr. Pepper, frankly. But I want you to know that I use it every single day, and I hope that you'll take a moment and sign up with them. I've given you a discount code, and it's down in the link below, so make sure you grab it. EVIL10. And remember, you can cancel this thing at any time. Well, Vinny then asked Dr. Ho to talk a little bit about the fear that Tylee and perhaps even JJ were feeling, but most importantly, what Tylee may have been feeling as her mother started to label her as a zombie. Now, Tylee undoubtedly heard her mother talking about castings and the ratings of evil spirits, including zombies, and I suspect that she also heard of the method that Lori and Chad had come up with to cast out evil spirits and keep them from re-entering into somebody. Remember Lori's comment in that testimony where she said that she folded Satan into a taco and cast him out. Holy cow, let's listen.
Dr. Judy Ho, I want to read this to you. This is from a probable cause affidavit. Melanie Gibb further informed me, an officer, that Lori Vallow called Tylee a zombie in the spring of 2019. Gibb was on the phone with Lori and heard Lori call Tylee a zombie, to which Tylee responded, "Not me, Mom. Not me, Mom." Do you think Tylee knew that she was going to be on her mom's hit list?
That is so chilling to see that in writing. And I almost see Tylee pleading for her life in that very, very short utterance of, "It's not me, Mom. Please don't mistake me for one of these demons or devils or whatever it is that you believe in that is haunting this world. That is not me. Please do not do anything to me." And in what Mike just shared about this portrait of this family, where Tylee was JJ's protector, in so many ways, they really just had each other, right? The parents, the uncle in this case, they just weren't really present. They weren't really connected to their children. And very quickly, kids pick up on this sense of, I am not safe in my own home. And then Tylee is taking on the role of an adult, taking on the protector role with JJ. And JJ and Tylee probably both had moments where they feared for their safety in their life throughout, is what I'm starting to find out from all of this evidence that we're learning through this trial. Of course, Vinny, sorry about that. So on the one hand, this brings closure for the children. This is a way of understanding what happened and gives a reason, an explanation, and it probably allows them to have some semblance of control. But on the other hand, this is a source of continued trauma. There's still the father's trial. There's now the processing of all of this, the extreme hurt and pain and anguish that their mother may have been through in the last moments of her life. And we know that people can develop post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms from learning about and knowing that a family member has been hurt, has been killed, something horrific has happened to them. And I do think that most likely these children are going to need professional support. I really do hope that the media attention also isn't going to pry so much into their personal lives and allows them some peace and some time to really process this on their own.
Well, as our hour ended, Vinny asked me about Tammy Daybell, and I was so focused on some of the pain of this investigation that I quickly mentioned her, and I want to just make a point of the fact that Tammy Daybell was murdered. And I didn't spend enough time talking about that, but I turned my final seconds to everybody else, including each of you who have been watching this trial unfold. I thought about the first responders that have been involved in this case, about the family members who have been involved in this case. I thought about all the court officials that have been involved and all of the trauma that they and each of you have experienced as you've listened to these recaps. You've looked at the case and you've empathetically thought about the murder victims, their families, and frankly, the social impact that this had on all of us. Let's watch this little segment.
Mike King, we have about 20 seconds. Your thoughts about Tammy tonight?
Well, number one, Tammy didn't deserve any of this, and she was murdered. And we're going to see someone else held accountable later, I hope. And that is really important. I'm so grateful to be on with Dr. Ho. I know of her compassion. I've worked a lot of cases alongside Judy where I've seen her clinical expertise, but also her heart. And Vinny, I know where your heart is as a former prosecutor, and the anger that all of us feel when we watch something like this, as does the community that's watching this show tonight. And so that we all need a little bit of counseling after something like this one.
Well stated. Mike King, Dr. Judy Ho, thank you so much.
Well, this brings me to the purpose of today's video. How following these cases can negatively impact us, me and you. Now, Rachel Naomi Remen taught that, quote, the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and in loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to walk through water without getting wet, close quote. What an amazing comment, and what a reminder that these issues leave and have pieces and parts that stick with all of us and things that will bother all of us. So first, I want to talk about first responders, the case investigators, the prosecutors, defense, all of the court officers, and of course, those who served on the jury. And with this discussion, I'm going to include each of you who have been following this case so darn closely. You know, hearing about
one or more of these things really has an impact on us. More importantly, people who witness tragedies, even if it's witnessing the recalling of a tragedy, they're likely to have a negative impact by the event placed on them personally. Experts suggest that a high percentage of those who are involved in the criminal justice system will experience high or even very high levels of compassion fatigue. Reliving these emotional and physical traumas takes a toll on everybody involved, including, and I gotta say it again, each of you who have been following this true crime story. Now, this secondary trauma is sometimes referred to as vicarious trauma. You're feeling it and living it through someone else. This compassion fatigue is as well known, or secondary traumatic stress as it's known by. Now, the definitions are going to vary a little bit, but the impact from indirect exposure to these traumatic events can really be disruptive and painful for anyone. For some, it might be a real short-term, short-lived kind of an event where you have some bad feelings. But for others, it can last for a long time. And for those of you who might be survivors of trauma and violence, it can trigger emotions that you long ago tucked away. So it's vitally important that we all maintain a level of balance in our true crime binging. Now keep in mind, I want you to binge on Profiling Evil all the time, but make sure you're filling your bucket with good stuff too. Keep in mind, you cannot continually fill this emotional bucket that each of us have with ugliness and not expect to exhibit some ugliness yourself. There's got to be balance in all of our lives. So when we binge on true crime, my counsel is, I hope that we'll all spend a little more time, maybe equal or greater amounts, in things that promote healthy self-care. Spend time listening to inspirational music, or going out and helping a friend or someone that you don't even know. Establish a process of peer association and look for positive peer associations and for opportunities to serve one another. You know, well-developed coping strategies and established support systems are going to minimize the impact of looking at ugliness. So I think there's a couple of really important lessons to learn as we study criminal behavior and as we look at our own interactions with these cases. I've spent a great deal of time investing in the Profiling Evil Academy, a place where you can learn a whole lot more about criminal behavior and the criminal investigative process. I hope that you'll consider signing up for that and taking advantage of our channel membership. It's a great way to get additional information that might help you not only understand the predators that we're talking about, but understand some of the emotions that you have in legitimate ways. You know, in a weird sort of way, Mother's Day weekend is a great time for us to focus on more positive things than those horrors that we've witnessed during the Vallow Daybell murder trial. This misguided parent is not reflective of all parents. We know that. Now, she's the anomaly. And while some of you may have had a really bad experience with your own mother, one thing I do know is if you're listening to this, you had a mother. And you survived that mother. So spend the day focusing on some of the lessons that you learned from your own mother, whether they are good lessons or bad lessons, and contemplate how you're taking those lessons learned and becoming a better human being yourself. Lori Daybell, she's going to spend her first Mother's Day as a convicted child murderer. She murdered her own children. Children who deserve to have a safe childhood and to live a full life. To quote that comment made in court, she deserved the chance to go out and date, speaking of Tylee. JJ deserved the chance to grow and develop and become better. Tammy Daybell certainly deserved the opportunity to see her grandchildren grow and live a full and productive life. You know, Lori Daybell could have done better, and each of us in turn can do better. So let's focus on the lessons learned from our mothers and not the horrors of events like the Vallow Daybell murder case. So my question for all of you are, what are your thoughts on this video, folks? Now, we're going to continue to explore cult behaviors as time goes on, but we're kind of drifting back to some of the other cases that we've been looking at now that Daybell is wrapped up. We'll be back for sentencing, and we'll start ramping up for Chad Daybell's plea or trial. But as we try to make sense of what's going on, make sure that you're checking out the Chad and Lori Daybell story map. Hey folks, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I want to just take a quick minute to remind you about the Chad and Lori Daybell story map. You can find it at profilingevil.com under story maps, and I hope you'll go over and visit it. It gives you a chance to go through and kind of explore this case from beginning to end. Has all kinds of information about those first hearings, about what happened. But then I think one of the things that's pretty dang cool is it goes in and it talks about them individually. Not only has an overview, but it has a way to check out more about Lori, her former husbands, where she lived, Chad and his former wife, Tammy, and the circumstances leading up to her death. You can learn more about what light and dark is, according to them, and actually hear Chad speaking at one of those Preparing a People conferences. You can go into other family members like Stacy Cope, Joseph Ryan, Charles Vallow, Alex Cox, JJ and Ty Lee. You can look at the court processes, and you can get a little more information about Profiling Evil. So again, I hope you'll go back and check that out. Now let's get back to the program. Hey, make sure you've hit that like and subscribe button, folks, and don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And please consider joining our channel memberships. My favorite, again, it's the Academy level. Hey, thanks for supporting us, and check out Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course here on YouTube. You can also find Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform, so please go over. We just surpassed 100,000 downloads. Now in the audio podcast world, that is big news, so please support us there. And if you're interested, go to my other podcast, Mapping Evil with Mike King, where we look at criminal cases in Australia and we compare some of those serial killers over in Australia with serial killers here in the United States. Hey, thanks again, folks. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene. And to all you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day.